Thank you, Pavitra and Nirupa, for joining us today on Let's Talk Business series by Reality NXT.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
So, you have seen your father run this business. I want to know from both of you, when you took over the reign, what were the three key fundamental changes you thought you would bring into your organization that would be a growth for the next 20 years?
Good. So I think first of all, I think the organization we get to inherit is a very great organization in terms of culture and also just the legacy that he's built, and his reputation in the business just sort of allows us to have a halo effect, so to speak. So I think from the first principles, I think generally the organization has a great approach. But of course, I think today we need to modernize some things. Culture is a big aspect of it. The second is decision making. I think that has to really get delegated to a number of people. It's already happening, but I think for both of us also to really sort of step up and do more and look strategically at what the organization has to, where we need to be. Operational decision making can continue to be further delegated. And third, I think sort of having a more global outlook. Of course, the real estate business is very local, but there are many changes happening today across the world that we can take as examples and translate them back into India or Bangalore or any of the markets in which we play. And technology is a big part of that. So just sort of seeing those trends both in technology and in capital markets, and looking globally and bringing it back. While that is something he has done in his vision in bringing townships to the concept of townships that we've pioneered. I think there's a lot of other factors as well, maybe just how we go to market or how we finance or whatever that we can continue to sort of look outside.
I would say, in addition to what Pavitra has said, I would think that scaling up is the name of the game. Like, how do you scale up faster and quicker? So, what we've done in 36 years, can we do the same amount in the next 5 to 7 years? So, scaling up exponentially is one of it. I think tech is important because whatever you do in business, so if you want to stay ahead of the curve, if you want to have a competitive advantage, if you want to grow exponentially, you need technology. So how do we adopt more tech into our business and incorporate that? And probably the third is, I think we'd like to keep up the culture that has been built. I think Brigade has a very strong culture that has been laid by our chairman, and it's how do we propagate that in the generations to come for the next 20 years. Because initially when we started, I think everybody by face and name, and today there's so many new hires every month that sometimes we don't even meet everybody. But how do we still inculcate a culture that is strong enough to withstand the test of time? So I think those are the three focus areas that I would look at.
So, Nirupa, we have heard and we have read also in 2009, you joined as a trainee in the Brigade Group. So, could you tell us briefly about the journey when you started in the Brigade Group?
Yeah, so 2009, almost 14 years ago, I joined, and I, along with one of our co-workers and chairman's office, Pradyumna, we decided to go to every single building that Brigade has ever built as management trainees and get feedback, from all our clients on how Brigade was doing, were they happy with the product, whether it was 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. I think that was a great base to understand where our strengths lay and where our what we needed to improve. And I think over the course of the last 14 years, I've taken it in a very step-by-step and strategic manner. So I had the option to either shadow my dad in the large vertical, which is the residential side of it, or I had the opportunity to, do my own, explore on my own in the smaller vertical, which was hospitality. We were just starting off. And I think at that point, I decided, I'd rather work in the small vertical of hospitality where I could make decisions, not just observe and, observe my dad. And because I think that in the end, the quality of your decision making is very key to how you do business.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start off with the smaller vertical where even if I made a bad decision, it's not going to have very large repercussions. But I think you gain a lot of insight when the buck stops with you. So I wanted to have that decision making ability. So I started off just in hospitality, just in marketing, digitizing that. Slowly moved on to new business development, contracts, so legal side of things. And then I worked with just hospitality where we launched a couple of restaurants. So I understood the F&B space because through that process. So for first 7 years of my career, I just focused on the hotel business, which was my passion. And then after that, I launched the Reap, which was the tech accelerator. And then after that, my portfolio grew to office and retail as well. So it's been a very interesting journey,
Yeah.
lots to learn, because I think you can spend your entire life in just one of those domains and still not learn everything.
True.
So it's just been a very incredible learning experience, I would say.
So, Pavitra, I have also read about you that you have studied abroad and you have also had your professional career abroad, and then you shifted in 2017 to Brigade. So, how the shift was for you from the international market? You must have seen professionally the culture, the way, the functionality of professional life is, and shifting to an unorganized real estate sector in India. So, how was the shift for you?
So actually, both of us have studied and worked abroad. I ended up spending a little more time than Nirupa outside the country, just from personal reasons. So yes, I did have a chance to work for longer outside, and I think that was really valuable experience. Although sometimes you tend to think maybe if I had more time overlapping with my dad in the business day to day, that would have also been useful. But you can always take away from every experience. So I had the chance to work in real estate in the US in a private equity firm. And I think that was where I really got a lot of the basics in terms of how investors look at real estate, how they look at investments, how they look at companies that they want to invest in or lands that they want to invest in. And a lot of insight as to how we as a company need to behave with our investors. So whether we have private equity investors or as a listed company, we have so many more stakeholders. That was a really valuable experience, not just in terms of qualitative things, but also quantitative, the kind of information that you need to be giving and how you need to constantly update your outlook as well.
Right.
So yeah, I think coming back, it is a cultural change. My entire professional career was in the US. So when I moved back, it was quite a change. And then also coming into the organization at a fairly senior role, I wasn't really used to the way people expect management and owners and promoters to behave. So that took me a while to sort of get into that frame of mind. I think the positives are you try to, try to take decisions by building consensus. That's not always the case. I mean, with our company, we do that. But I think even in smaller team environments, getting people to speak up and feel like they have a voice to share whatever, not be intimidated just because chairman or managing director or somebody senior is in the room. So I think that's really helped, make everybody feel like they are also part of big things that happen in the organization. So those two were really big takeaways. And I think on the just in terms of HR and interpersonal, I know the pain of going through appraisals and not feeling like maybe you've been fully appreciated, or maybe how do you get clarity on your career path. So just sort of empathizing more with people. But then the flip side comes from managing all of that and managing a large organization where you have so many different ambitions, but also have to channel everything towards one goal. So it's been interesting. It's still a learning journey as we elevate into the new roles. There are even more things to learn, but I think we're confident because whatever challenge has come our way, the more you do it and the more you address it, then it starts to become comfortable. So from a place of just not knowing and a bit of discomfort, then you just know how to do it, and then it becomes easy actually.
Of course. And with your personal experience in US, you must have also thought about the culture aspect, right, of a work culture. So do you, both of you, it's for both of you, what kind of work culture you wanted for Brigade Group? Did you guys decide on the vision and did you bring certain changes to the culture in the Brigade Group?
Yeah, so we have a culture that has been set out by our chairman. It's called QC First. It's actually our core values. So it stands for quality and customer centricity first. And the first is F for fairness, I for innovation, R is for responsible socially, and T for trustworthiness. And I think while those are our core values, we want our culture to be based on that. So whether you're an employee, you're a vendor, you're a partner, you're an investor, you're a customer, we want everybody to feel that if they work with Brigade, they get a quality product. They're a customer. That customers feel like, hey, they are the center point of our decision making. Everybody feels that they're treated fairly. Again, whether it's a vendor, whether it's an employee, it's important that they feel that I've been treated fairly. And of course, being responsible socially is not of course, we do large projects like redevelopment of lakes, parks, create hospitals, plant trees. We do all of that, but being responsible socially also stems like every employee wants to contribute in some way as well to the society. So, how do you give them enough opportunity to do that as an organization? And last is trustworthiness, right? I mean, if people don't trust you, then there's no point in doing business.
True.
So how do you live up to that? So how do you create a culture of trustworthiness? Like, do you have a zero tolerance policy for lack of integrity and things like that? Then people believe that, hey, this is an organization that wants to sort of walk the talk when it comes to its core values. So that's the culture. I think that's the culture that the chairman wants to set. And like I said, it's important that as you grow in your journey, that it's not people dependent, but it's process dependent. But the culture and the core principles and the values of the organization has to drive that growth as well. So.
True. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think what is really important is similar to what Nirupa said, is to walk the talk. And I think that's something we both strive to do. Like, yes, we lead this organization, but we are pretty grounded, or we would like to think that we are pretty grounded and very approachable. So, to be accessible to everybody in the organization is something Dad and Chairman has always done. And I think that's, that's something very special about our organization. And that's something we think is really, worth continuing to do for sure. Because I know it gives people a sense of comfort, a sense of, sometimes people just want to be heard. There are policies and there are ways in which we work, and it may not apply 100% to everybody. But to just know that you're being heard and, okay, your feedback will be taken into account, or maybe you're explained as to your someone is explaining to you why we need to do things a certain way. That's more important than maybe what the outcome is going to be. So that's really important for us. And overall, the basis that we have for our culture is excellent. I don't know too many organizations in this industry that really have thought through each aspect of the values and clearly laid them out and continually sort of reinforce them with the organization. So I think that's something that sets us apart, and we will continue to evolve that as it's both of us running the organization, of course, with so much support and help from many people in the organization, professionals as well, who are leading all of the verticals. So I think it is not just something that we expect people to do, but also it's driven top down, and we expect everybody to embody those values.
So first Embassy Group, and then we have noticed Prestige pushing their boundaries, pushing the demographics to create a presence in national level. So when are we going to see Brigade Group pushing the demographics, entering into the Western or the Northern markets? What are the plans on those front? And also, we have noticed that you have launched in Gift City. How was the experience behind the launch of the project in Gift City, and what kind of traction have you gained?
So I'll just talk about our expansion plans.
Yeah.
Actually, we are already present in multiple markets. Yes, they're predominantly South Indian markets. So Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Mysore, Kochi. We've done one-off projects in smaller cities as well. So our strategy is to focus on these markets. Bangalore is, of course, our mainstay. Chennai is fast becoming a very large market for us. And Hyderabad, we are still expanding. We have a project going on there. It's our second residential project, and actively looking for more. And I think we're quite differentiated in our strategy in that sense. We have got this question many times, but we believe very strongly that real estate is a very local game. We're well aware of the kind of bandwidth that it requires to really expand into a market, into a geographical market. And since we are a multi-domain business, we're there in residential, office, retail, hospitality, tech also. So it makes sense for us to sort of look at one market and then go deep into it in all the verticals, as opposed to maybe just taking one aspect and then going across the country. And we've seen that happen well for some, maybe not so great for others. So it really depends on each organization and what they feel is the best fit. The dynamics of the customer in all our markets is also pretty similar, driven by the IT sector. While people do say, okay, that's a lot of concentration of the IT sector, but that goes for an entire economy nationwide. So I think the customer in these three markets is very sophisticated. They're very tech savvy. They're mostly salaried workers. So all of that really helps on many fronts, especially on the residential front. So that's kind of why we like these markets. And there's a lot of room to grow in both those additional cities. If we wanted to get up to, at least maybe 50% of what Bangalore market is for us today, there's still a lot of run rate and there's a lot of room to grow. And I think focusing on that versus spreading into newer markets just now is not something we want to take the call right now. I think eventually, maybe in like 3 to 5 years time frame, we can reevaluate and see, does it make sense to add something else? But right now we're quite clear about it. And we're also very particular about the kind of risks that each of these other markets entail, So it's really a question of, for that reward, like how much risk are you going to take? And we're okay with that kind of risk reward equation in, say, Chennai and Hyderabad. And we also have a really great brand, being a South Indian player in those two markets. We get the question all the time of people saying, come to Mumbai, we have lands, we'd love to work with you. And so we know we would have a great brand there as well. But right now we feel this is where we need to focus, and eventually maybe in the medium term we'll relook.
So what kind of traction are you getting in the Gift City project? Like, how is the experience behind that?
Yeah, so I think the decision to go into Gift City was kind of like a little impulsive also, because all of us, the senior leadership, walked into Gift City, we were shown the infrastructure, and honestly it was very futuristic, it was very impressive. And I think at that point in time, the central government and our Prime Minister were promoting Gift City quite a bit, and I think we believed in the promise, and we wanted to kind of support that first large smart city. So I think we were one of the first builders, especially in the south, to enter, and then I think quite a few others followed. We have a hotel and office building there. It did start off slow, because I think anytime you're trying to do something new for the first time, create a new market, it is going to be a slow process. It didn't take off as fast as we would have liked, and as maybe even the Gift City authorities would have liked. But now I think, again, the government has been consistent in creating a lot of incentives for people operating out of Gift City. So there's a lot of traction. Our office space is almost completely leased out there. Our hotel has been seeing better traction. It was again slow initially, but there is a lot more activity in GIFT now. So I would say that there is support for that project. They're very cooperative, and they're very supportive anytime you have any issues. But I would say the USP of that space and why we entered was the kind of infrastructure that they were building around Gift City, which is very impressive. And most of our cities and metro cities, all of us like to complain about the lack of infrastructure. Whereas I think in Gift City, they created the infrastructure first, then saying, okay, let's do that, and then people will come. So I think it's a evolving process, and hopefully it will be a huge success story in the years to come.
So talking about hospitality, I wanted to personally understand from you, also for my viewers, how a hospitality project is actually laid out in terms of getting a hospitality brand on board, in terms of revenue share, in terms of how long these partnerships will stay. So what goes in the decision making on the hospitality front?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I can probably talk for 1 hour on it, but to keep it short, basically when you look for a parcel of land with the hotels, especially in India, because the rates in India are not very high. While of course this particular quarter seems to be an exception to the rule. In India, the hotel business is very sensitive to the land cost. So when you buy a particular parcel of land, first of all, you need to make sure that whether you're leasing it or buying it, it's not too expensive and it won't hurt the profitability of the hotel overall. Once you find the parcel of land, then you need to figure out, do the market study, understand how to position it. So whether you want a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, 5-star deluxe hotel, how you want to position it. then what we do is we reach out to the brands, because we've been in the space now since 2009. We pretty much know everybody there in the field. So we reach out to the brands that we think will be a good fit, and of course, like, we have to make sure that the brand isn't already operating in a close by location. So there's a restriction clause that says, okay, a certain brand cannot have two hotels in the same location. And once you identify the brand, then we work with the brands to create the design, work with them for the design development, understand what kind of costs and capital expenditure we want to spend on it. Again, the key in hospitality is to not overspend.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's very difficult to get the kind of returns that investors want. So you have to keep your costs low, whether it's for land or capital expenses. And then you build it out. We work closely with the brands to work with their design and their brand standards. Because in the end, you want a product that will withstand the test of time. Because hotels are not made for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. They're made for decades and even generations to come. Each brand has its own list of fees. The fees, if you read them, they can go into pages. But basically, there's a base fee to manage the hotel, and there's an incentive fee, which depends on your gross operating profits. And then there are various other fees: technical services fees, marketing fees, reservation fees. So it all adds up.
Yeah.
And on average, if I just had to put a ballpark, about 10% of your top line goes in all these fees. If I were to just average that out. And in terms of the terms of engagement, so developers like us would actually build out the hotels. We own the hotels, but we hire brands like Marriott, IHG, Accor to come and manage the hotel for us. So they are called our hotel managers. And the terms of the contract can be, I think the lowest I've seen is 12 to 15 years. And it can even go up to 60 years if you're working with a brand like, say, a Four Seasons. So the range is anywhere between 15 to 60. But on average, I would say hotel managers like you to work with them for at least 20 to 25 years.
Wow. Okay. A
Yeah.
lot goes in.
I mean, you
Awesome.
can exit, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So you might it's like a marriage. Once you get in, hard to get out till that contract term is over. And ideally, you shouldn't be getting out of a brand, because you should pick the right partners
Yeah.
beforehand. So
How do you pick out the right partner? How do you think this partnership would work?
So it's dependent on so many factors. I always say, like, working with a hotel, and I always call it the most complicated form of real estate, because there's just so many moving parts. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and every piece of the puzzle has to come together for a hotel to be successful. And there are so many what could go wrongs, right?
Yeah.
So there's the product. If the product is not okay, location not okay, the pricing is not okay, if the team is not okay, the service delivery, right? Whether it's your rooms or food or banquets, there's so many. It's a very people-heavy business, so the touch points are so many for people that the number of what could go wrongs are many. If you were really to ask me what are the key driving factors to a successful hotel, the first and foremost I would say is the general manager, because he's the captain of the ship.
Yeah.
So whichever brand you choose, if you work within, I would say the tier 1 hotel operators, right, the global top players, more or less 60% is the same. But I would say the key to a successful hotel is the general manager, because he's the captain of the ship. Then I would look at, I would say, a brand's global distribution system, because you want their sales and marketing efforts to be the best. So how well is their sales and marketing, and how well are their processes and procedures? Because it has to function on a daily basis with so many people. Unless your processes are very strong and your controls are very strong, as I mentioned, again, there are so many what could go wrongs in a hotel. So I would say brand, general manager, global distribution system, and the strength of your processes.
Great.
And of course, the leadership team in India. See, a lot of these brands are global brands. So
Yeah.
maybe globally they have a very strong brand. But how is the senior leadership team in India? Because India is a very unique market. You know, what works in the US or Europe is not going to work in India. So how well do they understand the Indian market, the Indian consumer, Indian sentiments? So it's a very complex business, but that's one of the reasons I also love it.
So talking about prices, according to a recent data report by Anurag, MMR and Bengaluru have led the way in property rise in the last 4 years. So what other trends can we expect in 2023, especially in residential and commercial front?
So I think we can continue to expect price increases. The whole sector has really come off a very difficult time since 2015 onwards. We had started off with demonetization. There were changes in the GST law. Then we had the RERA regulation, which is something that fundamentally changed how any developer deals with its residential customers. Then we also had an NBFC crisis, which made it very difficult for many developers to borrow. And then on that, again, another GST change, which sort of took away the tax benefits that we were able to get in the real estate sector. So any input cost, any GST on our input cost was taken away. So overnight, our business models and cost, everything changed. And then, of course, the pandemic. But the silver lining, if there could be one for something like the pandemic, was that the residential market really took off. I think people were stuck at home, revisiting their entire living situation. If they were renting, they felt they should buy. If they had their own homes, then maybe they felt they needed a bigger space, or they wanted better amenities, or just a different scene. Even post-pandemic, the lifestyle is just very different. We still have hybrid meetings. Some schools still do hybrid schooling for some of the kids. So I think the lifestyle itself has changed, and everybody reevaluated and I think reprioritized what a home means to them. So that sort of became the priority for people to put their money into something. And I think that's why the prices have been increasing. Also, there were a lot of changes on the cost front for construction last year. So all of that has led to a price push. And of course, now that there is the demand picture looking really good, I think we will continue to see that. While there have been increases on the interest rate front, so far we've not seen any impact. But maybe if there are future rate hikes, customers will start thinking about, can they afford this? Should they be taking a mortgage? For many customers who can't afford to buy a home unless they take a mortgage, it could become unaffordable. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. But overall, the sector has seen a lot of consolidation. Like, for example, in Chennai, where we were able to take a very good market share over the last couple of years, there was a consolidation, again, in a report from ANAROC itself, that there was over 65% consolidation. So that means that many real estate players disappeared from the market. So that's allowed many of us who remained to sort of be in a position of pushing prices. And it sort of has to accommodate the rising costs of doing business in this industry with new regulation, increased GST, all of those things, more cost on the materials, and also what customers want. They want a lot of features in their home. They want it to be landscaped well. They want larger spaces, and all that costs, a great deal on the investment side. So I think in the future, yes, it will continue to increase. The positive thing about Bangalore, it's always been a stable market. So even if prices do increase, it increases in a very in a very measured way, whereas MMR and even NCR tends to see a lot more peaks and troughs, so a lot more cyclical on that front. So that way, Chennai and Hyderabad, well, I should say Chennai should also see some price increases. Hyderabad currently seems quite a hot market, a lot of money coming into that place because of many factors, and I think it might be as one of the top 2 most expensive markets in the country today.
Also, we have noticed post-pandemic, Indian home buyers are trusting branded developers more. So, any reports, if we take the ANROC or Prop Equity, it has mentioned that branded developers' demand has increased, which has not led any home buyers think about the price as a factor, but as a brand name. So, do you think this trend will be continuing this year itself also?
I think customers also, while they are very savvy about what the product is out there, we tend to see customers also go through those cycles. So in bad times, everybody moves towards branded players. It's called flight to quality in so many different aspects of the whole world, right? But when times are good for developers and we're increasing prices and overall there is a price increase, then it tends to become difficult for maybe people to justify, why am I paying so much for the branded player? Then they will tend to go for the next tier on. And in some cases, if they have a bad experience, then they have that whole cycle happen to them all over again. So the next time there are bad times in the sector or just challenging conditions, that's when you don't see some developers maybe put out the product or take a longer time to deliver or have issues or whatever. And then they learn the lesson. Customers sort of feel like, okay, that was a lot of pain, and next time I buy, or if I have to redo my transaction, I'll go to a branded player. So we see the cycles over and over again. We also, have to coach our teams and help our teams also understand that, hey, we have been in this space for a long time. So, if you can compare projects that were launched around the same time as our projects and then come back 5 years later and kind of see how those were delivered and people are living in there and what is the quality of construction, then that is the proof of the pudding, really.
Let's talk about Brigade Reap. You have 50 plus startups under Brigade Reap. What are the three startups, if you have to point out, which surprised you recently because the kind of market traction it has got? And it was completely, you were unaware about these startups booming into such manner. What would be those three startups if you have to name?
Yeah, so it's a little tough one because it's like asking who are your three favorite children out of 50 or 60 of them.
You have 60 children.
If you have 60 kids. But I would say in general, the general trend that surprised me was when we started Brigade Reap. I thought it would be a lot of tech for the real estate space, like construction technology, for the sites, for development, for actual construction. But I think the biggest surprise overall for me has been that almost 40% of our startups are in the sustainability space. So they all have solutions on how to build in a more responsible manner. And I would say that the traction that those startups in the clean tech space have seen is what has surprised me a lot, because they've been able to provide solutions at a very affordable rate, almost on a SaaS-based model. So it's like subscribe for clean air and we'll give you clean air. Subscribe for water monitoring and we'll give you water monitoring. And there have been three startups, just to name them, for instance, which have seen very good traction. One is WeGot, which is a water monitoring solution. And just by putting sensors, in every water outlet in an apartment, for instance, so if there's a kitchen at the kitchen sink and a bathroom, they've been able to save billions of liters of water just by measuring how much of water is being utilized.
Right.
So the impact that you have in developments and housing communities is massive. A second one, for instance, is, say, Clareco. So during COVID, they were the hot, I would say they were the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year, because everybody wanted clean air. So I was wondering how they would survive post the pandemic, So during the pandemic, there was the fear psychosis of, hey, should we enter a mall? Should we enter an office building? It's enclosed. What about the quality of air? So the kind of investment that went into air filtration was huge, and I didn't know if it was a trend that would last. But what they have, I would say, metamorphosized into is they are now looking at not just providing clean air as a service, but also reducing your HVAC costs to pay for the subscription of their clean air.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting model to see how these startups that did well during COVID actually continue to do well, or how they have to pivot in order to continue to do well in a non-COVID time. Another interesting one is actually the retail space, because you don't see too much of tech or new business models in the retail or in the mall space. So there's a company called Light Store, and what they do is that they take up space from mall developers like us, and then they in turn give it on short leases to other online brands. So for instance, there's a lot of, they call it, I guess it's a lot of hybrid selling now. So offline guys want to go online guys want to go offline. So what they do is they give a space to the online brands that want to test out how their brand will do in the offline space. And they have a lot of sensors and gamification to see, and also they can redesign the store in like 48 hours. So, overnight they can give the store to another online player to see. And basically the change is very quick. Otherwise in retail you will see 6-year leases, 9-year leases, 12-year leases, 18-year leases. So to do 3-month leases and to turn around the store quickly is a big innovation. So Light Store is one that has done well. And again, I was wondering how they would scale up, but they've really received a very good traction.
So the recent news of broker network being write-off, right? Now the Proptech companies are being bit of more on the edge because of the investors, how they would look upon Proptech companies for fundraising. What's your take on that?
See, I think the basic principles in any tech company has to be scalability and sustainability. Like unit economics is important, and I think that's what people are realizing. You have to have a solid grounding and a foundation. At some point, you need to have a path to make money.
Yeah.
If that is not there, then obviously it becomes harder to it becomes hard to sell. Of course, there are a lot of the unicorns that you see, the kind of growth traction that they've had. Initially, I think the focus of investors is, hey, how do I get more eyeballs? How do I scale up? Profitability is not the main focus. But eventually, if you really want to become a lasting institution, then you need to sort of have unit economics.
Yeah.
And you cannot just rely on valuation. Yes, of course, you can be a unicorn and all that, but there is also a fall from grace if you are not able to show unit economics eventually, or you don't have a path to it. So at Reap, what we do is we try to stick to a few basic principles. One is we ask startups about their product or their solution, and then try to see how it can be from a nice to have to a must have.
Yeah.
So how can you make your product or solution a must have? The second is, of course, how do you scale up? How do you have the back end technology to scale up? And the third is, of course, how do you work towards profitability? How do you have, what is your unit economics, and how do you work to be profitable? We work with a lot of them to see if they can get into a SaaS-based model, because that seems to be a model which can get a lot of traction and where you can get repeat customers, customer acquisition becomes cheaper.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things we try to focus on.
So, as mentioned about unicorns, no broker is the unicorn right now in Proptech, and we are not seeing too much of unicorn coming in right now. So, do you think this is going to change soon for Indian Proptech companies?
See, basically, I would say 6 years ago when we started Brigade Reap, this term Proptech didn't exist. There's no Proptech, Contech, Reality Tech, whatever tech, there's nothing. That word didn't exist. So we've come a long way. Of course, it's been quite niche, and I would say the first 4 years it was very soft. But in the last 2 years, and I would also say one of the silver linings of COVID was it became a catalyst for technology adoption. For instance, AR and VR, people couldn't go to site. So people had to sell using VR technology.
Yeah.
They had to do it online. So they needed VR help. There was a lot of marketing, sales, data analytics companies that did well. Big data analytics did well. Consumer behavior analytics did well. So COVID became some sort of a spur or catalyst for tech adoption. And post-COVID, even during COVID period, we saw a lot of traction and fundraising for PropTech happen. So I would say in the last 2 years, PropTech has really has received a big push. No brokers won, but again, in the last 18 months, we've seen almost 4 startups in the PropTech space become unicorns. There's No Broker, there's India Inframart, there's LiveSpace, there was Square Yards is looking to become, I think they're more Soonicorns.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few Soonicorns in the PropTech space, so it is becoming deeper.
Yeah.
And now there's a new term called Babycorn.
Babycorns, yeah.
So Babycorn is soon to become Soonicorn.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's traction happening in the space.
Great. So Pavitra, a lot of RE brands, over a period of time are now focusing on their signature offerings. For example, Hiranandani is known for his reputation for design and creating new pin codes. So what kind of offering or signature style would we expect from Brigade Group you're creating? And in our terms, like in startup, we say it's a moat. So according to you, what would be the moat of Brigade Group? And you cannot quote like quality and, time delivery. Not like that. Any other moat you have for Brigade Group?
Well, you're sort of taking away the the two main things every developer wants to talk about. I think for us it is consistency. Regardless of what, people know that they will get a great product. So even if I'm not saying quality or whatever, they know what they're going to get and they get exactly that. So when we design our product, and I would say we are also very, very proud of the designs that we do. We also focus a lot on townships, and I think that is one of the most complex kind of real estate developments that you can do, because you're looking at how all of these uses really work together, and it's not just as simple as just saying, fine, I'll put an office building in this corner and do residential here and then put a mall there. There's a lot more that goes into it, and how do you size these things? How are you going to finance this construction? Because they all have very different financing models. And then how do you phase these, how do you phase like a township development? And that's something that from land acquisition to design to construction to how we market and sell, the whole organization's DNA is built around that. So it comes very naturally. And I think for us, the moat is when a customer lives in a Brigade property, that is when they realize the value of what they bought. So you can market it however you want, and you can say this is going to radically change your life. But we know from experience and from feedback, it's the things that they don't know that we even paid attention to.
Nice.
So it's like, oh, the corridor widths. I mean, sales team can talk about as much as possible. But once you're actually there and once you experience, why do we put so many lifts to a core? And why do we have, so why do we actually look at those numbers and ratios? Because it leads to a certain kind of experience, and that is constantly being finessed all the time. So today when I'm inspecting a project, the thought is always, what are we going to do better next? Like, how do we improve internet and cell phone connectivity in our buildings? As Nirupa said, there's so much focus on sustainability. So can every one of our products be delivered with certain set of features that is what a customer wants today, not just what you have, these many number of bedrooms or this kind of construction, but how they are actually going to experience the project. So what kind of open spaces do they have? What else can we do? Can we add air quality monitors? Can we plant urban forests? What else can we just make part of our standard offering? And that continuous improvement on that. And so the consistency in just doing that over and over again is how we've built the brand. And that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So even though from a sales perspective, we have really scaled up, I always say it wasn't something that happened overnight. These are projects that are 3 to 4 years in the making. You're looking at land, you're looking at the quality of the title, you're looking at your counterparty. So all of those things also give a certain level of comfort to your end customer. At this point we have thousands of them. So to just have the confidence that once I'm in here, I know I'm set. I'm not going to have worries about who I've invested with or any of that. So I think that is kind of what we've proven over and over again, and that's the challenge, to keep that going over the years despite whatever challenges may come up.
So it would be right to say that Brigade Group signature would be the townships by creating good lifestyle for the customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our old tagline was, for a better quality of life, upgrade to Brigade. So
Yeah.
we try to live by that.
I think that's still our favorite tagline, although we keep upgrading the taglines every so often.
Okay. So, Pavitra, in Bangalore, we have seen the real estate market growing vertically, and that has affected the outskirts of the Bangalore also, prices rising high. So, we have noticed prominent developers are shying away from affordable housing because of less incentive. What is your take on that?
So I think affordable housing is a really great goal to have for our country, and I know that was the intent of the whole Housing for All initiative. So the way in which most developers, us included, approached affordable housing was to look for a fairly reasonable cost of land, because that's a huge component in terms of making it affordable, and then designing the project. But what the customer wanted was the same product. So they basically felt like, okay, they basically wanted the same kind of specifications, the same kind of amenities, but the size was just smaller, so it became affordable in ticket size. And I don't think that was the spirit of what was trying to be inculcated. But at the same time, true affordable housing requires a lot more partnership with the government in order to get affordable land in the places where people actually want to live. Today, I can get cheap land, but it's somewhere that's not connected with infrastructure. Nobody's going to move there.
True.
So if it really has to happen, we need to have access to affordable land and then have incentives. Today, the incentives that we were given aren't really being looked at. So there was an affordable housing cap. Now it's almost 4 years or more than that. Actually, it came out in 2016, the guidelines. The max you can charge is 45 lakhs, but we know where inflation has gone. So that has to be relooked at. GST we used to have concessional GST rates. That's actually gone, and that disappeared overnight. So what we could pay for with a 12% GST was just suddenly made into an 18% GST. So, you also need some kind of predictability when you're looking to do longer term kind of projects, especially which affect a certain section of society. So, and it requires a rejig of your entire business model as well. So the same kind of amenities, the same kind of design is not going to work. And if a developer or the industry as a whole has to be motivated towards that, then some of these things have to be put into place. With only the government can do that, give those kind of regulations or procure land, and do it at a certain kind of rate. So only if that happens will people feel like, yes, I can take the incentive to do this, and I can predict for the next however long that these regulations will stay the same.
Yeah.
Otherwise, tomorrow your entire and we're all doing this for profit. We are listed entities. You have to show a profit. So you can't have that disappear overnight because of a change in regulation. So I think we would all like to do it, but to have confidence to change a business model and to do it in the right way, it would require a true partnership in the sense of it with the government also.
True. So talking about the Bangalore turning into, Silicon Valley has proven a boom for the real estate market. But there's a debate going on that whether the current influx is being marred by the slow transformation with regards to infrastructure projects. So the new spaces are coming in for the startups, new locations are being found for the startups. So do you think we shall be seeing a slow down on this and it will hit the ceiling, and or this migration of talent to this city would continue?
I don't think so. I think Bangalore is blessed with two things. One is, of course, the weather, and the second is just the huge concentration of IT talent.
Yeah.
And and that's not very easily replicable anywhere else. Of course, like what they're doing in Hyderabad is amazing. The kind of infrastructure everywhere, you have 100 feet roads, and of course, Bangalore would, of course, benefit greatly from that. But we are sort of doing our own workarounds, right? Despite the lack of great infrastructure, we still are finding ways to create new micro markets. So, for instance, of course, initially it was all ORR and Whitefield, and now we're moving to North Bangalore, and now we're moving to West Bangalore. So, if you look at Northwest Bangalore, the infrastructure is very good. There's no water logging on the roads. There's already metro connectivity from East and South Bangalore. There's a lot of infra projects projected for the north. So we are creating new micro markets where the infrastructure is better. So I don't think that large pools of talent or business will drastically shift. Of course, we've seen because of the infrastructure, some companies have moved to cities like Hyderabad. So Hyderabad has seen a huge uptick of, I would say, commercial office space take up. But Bangalore is still number one. It is still number one, and even last year, if you look at it, it is one of the strongest markets. I think in terms of overall grade A office space, it's Bangalore, then followed by Delhi, NCR region, Mumbai, and then perhaps Hyderabad. But yeah, we have to be on our toes. If we don't improve the infra, you're going to lose out. But like I said, for the two reasons that I mentioned, the great IT talent that we have, companies are still going to be attracted to Bangalore.
So you two are women entrepreneur, and what trait in real estate you believe as women entrepreneurs we are able to do better than the men?
Lifting bricks. No, I'm just joking. Honestly, I don't think there is anything specific about real estate, but maybe in running an organization, women tend to have a lot more empathy. They tend to be more sensitive about things. They tend to look after the teams a little bit more. And maybe person to person that could be different or whatever, but in general that is widely known in corporate culture per se. In real estate, I think it's a novelty, of course, that there are two women running this organization. Of course, it's with the help of a whole bunch of people, men and women. But I think that's very different, and that's something we are proud of, and I think all brigadiers are also proud of that. So what is really different, in terms of skills per se, I can't say, each one gender is, has an, indisputable advantage. I think we can both learn from each other. Like the things that women are good at, men can learn those things too. That it's not that hard to be empathetic with someone or understand if they need a special situation. And on the flip side, I think men do a lot of things that women can do better. Women can be a lot more assertive. We can not apologize so much about things, and we can just be ourselves. We're constantly told to do things a certain way, and you don't need to listen to that and not have so much guilt about things. And so I think it's a mutually it's something that both genders can learn from each other.
True.
So apart from those specific traits, I think our mother is from a very matriarchal society. She's Keralite, and we've always been taught by our parents. They've always said focus on your job and not the gender, because um, and I don't think either of us have been too swayed or caught up with, oh, we're women and this and that. I think because we're two sisters and maybe we didn't have a brother to compare ourselves to, we just did things the way we saw our father or our mother do things. I think both of them have been our big inspiration. Our mother was the first woman stockbroker in the Bangalore Stock Exchange. She's done multiple things based on the need of the hour, even though she didn't have the learning. So for instance, she's set up our 3 schools as part of the foundation. She did interior designing. So we've seen her transform herself and develop her skill set based on the need of the hour and based on what Brigade needed also.
Yeah.
And we've seen our father, like what has made him successful apart from the vision and the natural business acumen that he has. It's integrity, it's hard work, and the things they've taught us is, common sense is not so common, but to do well in business, all you need is common sense and hard work. So those are the kind of characteristics we've imbibed and inculcated. And we've been very fortunate, as Pavitra said, we've had the support of so many people, men included. Women, of course, are happy to see us, lead this company, but without the support of our male colleagues, it wouldn't have been possible. And they've been equally respectful of us. I don't think we've ever had major issues because of gender. And that's, to credit to all the men who work with us. In fact, I get a lot of encouragement even from our male competitors. I've had our competitors come and say, it's so nice to see women do well in this business. So
Right.
honestly, the experience has been amazing. So a lot of credit to our male counterparts in the space as well.
So I wanted to ask both of you if you have to give advice to young women entrepreneurs who are entering into real estate, what it would be. Because earlier real estate had a bad name. Now it's changing. Earlier it was said it's a quite male-dominated industry. And I still remember when I started, I was going to start in real estate. My parents were like, are you sure you want to do in real estate? So what would your advice would be for the young women entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think women anywhere, they have to be self-motivated, and also just not be too caught up in saying that things are stacked against them. There's no point focusing on it. There's all these old sayings of you have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good. I don't know how much of that is still really true. And, even if it is, constantly telling yourself that is not going to help the situation. So you sort of have to just ignore it and go ahead. It can be hard. I think, I've worked outside our company, and sometimes even as a lone female on the floor, sometimes you feel like you stick out a little bit, but you sort of have to have a thick skin. So I think if people are too sensitive, then it's going to be a problem for them. Also, I think looking out for a mentor, and not necessarily a female mentor. Finding someone who's going to, tell you how it is, and give you unbiased perspective and feedback is really important. And being a little strategic. So thinking a bit about how do you want to plan your life. I wish it weren't this way, but as women, we have to plan a lot of things. I really wish it were not this way, but because we kind of like have the bulk of the responsibility of having a household, or taking care of your kids, or you're the default person when it's elderly care or child care or whatever. So I think one of the other really important things also choosing your spouse. That's really important in terms of having the right partner who is going to support you. We've been extremely fortunate, and also having parents who supported us to go to work. I know a lot of women face those kind of issues too, that it's not always supportive on the home front. But those two things, I think today women are in a lot more control of who they choose to spend their lives with. So I think that should be a strategic decision. And then finally, I would say, really advocate for yourself. So when there are opportunities presented, just go ahead and grab them, and don't ask questions. And then later, see how you do, and then what comes next can always be discussed. But when there's an opportunity presented, just go ahead and do it and don't think twice. That's one thing women tend to do maybe a little bit, is to overthink. So just go ahead and do it and sit at the table and then figure it out later.
What's your advice, Nirupa?
My advice is I've always said, women should have should be financially independent. I think I'm a huge advocate of that. Again, stemming from my mother. So she always said, do whatever you want in life, but make sure you're financially independent. Because the moment you have that independence, you have the freedom to determine your destiny. It's not a financial reason why you have to stay with somebody, why you have to be at home somewhere, or, you get to make decisions for the betterment of your life. In terms of work, I would say do what you love and be really good at it. Be damn good at it so that nobody can ignore you. And being a woman, I would say it is rare. Like, I just came back from a conference and I was the only woman there at that conference, at least among the invited guests. And you can use it to your advantage. Maybe people want to understand more from you. Maybe people want to learn from you. You get extra attention because you're the only woman there. So people appreciate it also. So you can use your gender also to your advantage. It doesn't have to always be seen as a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would say, of course, we see a lot of women when we hire engineering trainees and graduates. It's usually 50-50. But we see a lot of women dropping out of the workforce, usually because, their partner is moving, or they have kids, or they need to stay at home and look after the kids. And I get that. Not everybody will have like a full-fledged support system. But I would say if you need to take a break, but make sure that you keep skilling yourself every year, spend some time and money. Maybe keep 5 or 10% of your salary to skill yourself, keep improving on yourself, and get back into the workforce at some point. Even if you've taken a break for 4 years, 5 years, it's okay. Take that break, keep skilling yourself. There's so many online classes, there's YouTube, Google, apps, Coursera, so many, Unacademy, Udemy. I remember when I was on maternity leave, I'd be on the treadmill trying to lose all the pregnancy weight and like learning a new course. Or I would, and my best ideas, like Brigade Reap came to me when I was on maternity leave, because I had the mind space. I delegated all my other responsibilities, so I had some mind space to think about what next. So sometimes, people think, I've had a child, maybe I should take a break, and it's a disadvantage. But no, maybe you can turn your disadvantages to your advantage. That's what I would say.
That's some wonderful advices from both of you. We are going to start our last segment called Rapid Fire, which is quite famous in our Let's Talk Business series. So Pavitra, rapid fire question for you. Current book that you're reading, and why would you recommend it?
I'm reading Satya Nadella's Time Out because I think he really radically changed the culture of Microsoft. And I think that's something to be said for a company like that. It became a very, from a legacy kind of organization, it is as youthful as any other tech firm today.
The worst advice that you have received till now, and the best advice.
I'll start with best advice. It's from my dad and it's perfect for me. It says, he always says, what's the problem with asking? Because I always tend to overthink. The worst advice, I think, is that women can do it all of the time. And really, it's unrealistic expectation. It's nonsense. First of all, nobody tells men that. And I think it's just BS, frankly. So it just sets you up for the wrong expectations of life. And then if you have, bad expectations, you're generally going to be unhappy about things.
Yeah.
So I think that was unnecessary for a whole generation of women to hear, really.
Completely agree. So who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship?
I mean, it sounds so cliche, but my parents, and to some extent my sister also, even though she's the younger one. I think for me, I think over the last couple of years at least, I just realized that my family is seriously kind of the sort of bedrock that I have in my life. And despite all of us being a family, we all have very different viewpoints. And it's refreshing to hear that even in the same family, there's no groupthink and everybody has different perspectives. So I have something to learn from each of them. And I'm sure there are other people out there too, but these are the people I tend to get a lot of my advice from.
What do you love most about your job?
I think how radically different it can be every day. in the same day I can be at a construction site with the laborers at the site, sort of understanding what is happening, and the same day you could be talking to a sovereign wealth fund, you could be talking to a government official, you could be sitting with the Reap team, understanding some new technology. So it's so varied and so different, and in the end it's doing something that impacts every single person in a way that they all uniquely understand. Every person has to be somewhere within four walls, and we make those walls. So I think that's what's really cool. It's got its own challenges, this industry, for sure, a lot of them. But I think it's very, it's so complex, and it's incredibly, it opens your eyes to almost everything that is going on around you. So it's a very cool industry in that sense.
And your favorite holiday destination?
Oh, there are so many. I think I just like to visit new places.
Yeah, but if you had to name one.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Italy, I guess.
Okay.
Italy is very varied in itself. Also, all across you have the Alps, and then you can be all the way in Sicily, and it's very varied, and that's it.
How do you relax at the end of the long day?
Generally, I just like to fool around with my kids. I have two boys. They're pretty crazy, so they have a funny sense of humor, and I like to just goof around with them. I think that's a big stress buster. I try to, come home without any stress, but to be honest, it's not that easy. But just seeing them and sort of how uncomplicated their emotions are really helps me out. I wish I could say, yes, I meditate, but I really don't. So I think for me, humor and laughing and just kind of being silly helps. It just, kind of diffuses any situation that there is.
What is your pet peeve?
Oh, not paying attention to detail. That my whole team knows. Typos, problems on the presentation. I can't stand that, but I think they all know that by now, and I've also sort of just let a few things go because I guess we just need to look at the bigger picture instead.
Is there something new you'd like to learn this year, and why?
Yeah, I think I'd like to learn how to play the guitar. I've done it. I've attempted it a couple of times, but never been, consistent about it. I like to sing, and I think knowing how to play the guitar along with that would be awesome.
Nice. And describe yourself in 5 words.
Not a fan of rapid fire. Okay, that's 6 words. I think I'm very self-aware. I'm a kind person. Pretty humorous. Very ambitious. And just generally want to be a good person.
Nice. Last, what advice do you have for the next generation?
Just go to work. Don't talk about just 9 to 5. Just, think about what you're doing. Like, work is actually a big part of your life. I feel like there's a lot of conversation today about how the hustle is bad and, why do companies want us to work like this? Work is, everybody needs to survive and to make a livelihood. So there's nothing wrong with going to a place and doing something that you enjoy. Now, if you're in a company where you don't want to be there, don't be there. Go away and stop making it bad for everybody else. But find something you want to do, and then do that. Do that to the best of your ability. I think today there's just too much talk about work-life balance. I think when you're young, that's where you need to give yourself. You need to establish yourself, and then you can have all of those choices. I think maybe today's generation wants everything right now, and the reality is going to hit at some point. So I mean, for us, we've all come through that and learned that it really helps if you make yourself the best that you can be in these initial years, because beyond that you do have a lot of commitments, family, balancing so many more things makes it difficult to really have that free solo time. So find something you love to do and just do it. And if you can get paid for doing it, that's even better.
Nice. See, that's it. That was your rapid fire round.
But you have to change that 5 best qualities thing.
So Nirupa, first question to you is current book that you are reading and why would you recommend it?
So I'm reading a book called Who Will Cry When You Die?
Me. I will cry.
No, it's a very cheesy book by Robin Sharma. But I like to read a lot about people and human behavior and insights, and it's on leadership a bit also. So it puts things in perspective, a lot of refreshers on how to behave with people and the society that we operate in. So sometimes it puts things in perspective.
Interesting. What are you grateful for?
Definitely grateful for my family and the health of my family.
And what is success for you?
I think success for me is what kind of positive impact can you have on people and how many? Or just having a positive impact on people, I think, is very important.
And if you could trade places with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
I would trade places with Rafa Nadal.
I knew it.
When he wins one of his Grand Slams. I want to be, just to know what it takes to maybe be the best in your field or in your sport in such a competitive space. Just to know what that means and what that feels like to, be the best in the world.
Okay. And what is your superpower?
My superpower? I think I spend a lot on the mind, so I visualize a lot of the things that I want, and generally it comes true. If I put enough energy behind my visualization, it generally comes true.
So you manifest a
Yeah.
lot, yeah. Okay. So what's one piece of advice you would go back and tell your younger self?
To not put so much pressure on yourself and to just enjoy life. Because I feel like I always put so much pressure that it adversely impacted performance to some extent. So just to relax and enjoy the process, enjoy college without focusing and putting pressure on grades, enjoy races without just to complete them, without putting too much pressure on timing, performance, just to enjoy the process and not just the end journey.
So describe yourself in one sentence.
In one sentence.
Yeah.
She got away with it.
Yeah. No, but that's tougher. Now I have to actually make a sentence that makes sense. So I think one sentence that I've always lived by is carpe diem, which means to seize the day and to live life to the fullest. Like I want to, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to feel that I lived a full life and I lived it on my terms. And hence, who will cry when you die?
Yes,
also.
I'll be crying. When you do that, I'll be crying.
What is your mantra in life?
Live life to the fullest.
Nice. Last, if you had time machine, what part of history you would go back to?
Like entire history?
Yeah, any part of the history.
Chola dynasty.
But you need to explain why.
Okay, so somebody asked me a similar question. Like, what do you like and don't like about the previous generation? What do you like and don't like about the previous generation? And what do you like and not like about the current generation? Honestly, I feel the previous generations had it quite hard. They've had to struggle, and I don't know what place the future generation will live in, and I feel like the future generation, like our young people, don't have the kind of emotional resilience that the previous generation had. Honestly, I'm pretty happy where we are. I like things the way they're going. I love where I'm at right now. I love getting older by the year. I don't want to even go back to a previous time in my life. I'm very happy where I am, and I would just be here. Be present.
Great.
So you're allowing her to say that. But I could not take a cop-out in which question was that?
Your favorite
The 5
destination.
words,
Yeah.
our destination. That was quite
I said
simple.
today, I had new places.